Good morning, everybody. It's 8:30, time to call the meeting of Tuesday, November 25th to order. Our first item of business is to approve the agenda, and we do have a few agenda additions. One is the authorization to purchase a van for the Sheriff's Department. Two is the approval of the Trojan Takedown Club's application to conduct bingo at fundraisers in 2015. And then also, we are going to move from consent the approval to develop the Armor Radio System plan. We're removing that to consent on the agenda. And number 4 is going to be request and discussion to create a new position in the VSO office.
Move to approve with the changes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. We'll move into citizens to be heard. Do we have any citizens to be heard today on items not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on. At our 8:35 item, then we have Clay Becker Veterans Court, and we have with us today Judge Lawson and Don Kautzman, drug coordinator, and I think we have, oh, I'm sorry, I missed the payment of the bills. Sorry, I'm trying to get ahead of you. Yes, all right.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
You've been at this court.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same, motion carried. And we have our attorney, Brian Milton, here. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Your Honor, what do you have for us today?
Well, Chairman Campbell. Well, good morning. We are here today to fill you in both on the progress of our Veterans Treatment Court and ask you for money. We'll just put that right out there so you know why we're here. We did get approved for a Veterans Treatment Court jointly between Becker and Clay County by the Judicial Council. That approval happened about 6 weeks ago. So we are up and ready to go with the pilot program. We've begun the process of trying to identify pilot participants. When we started our drug court program, we started with a couple participants in Clay and a couple participants in Becker, just to kind of work out the wrinkles. That worked really well. It also gave us some time to get up and going while we looked for funding. Now, many of you, I think all of you actually, have been to a drug court graduation before. Thanks for that. Thanks for the support that you've shown our drug court in the past. I'm just really remarkably proud of our drug court. I wish I could say that I had something to do with putting it together. I did not. I had absolutely nothing to do to put it together, but I now have the joy as part of my job of presiding over that court, and that will definitely carry over into our Veterans Treatment Court. So I want Brian just to talk a little bit about the County Attorney's Office and their support and the benefits that we can get from Veterans Treatment Court. Then Don will talk about the budget, then we'll talk dollars and cents.
I think morning, Joan. We're looking forward to the opportunity to start the Veterans Court. I think it'll be beyond just the drug court, a good addition. I think we'll see, we do actually already have one individual as a pilot individual, without going too far, but an individual with post-traumatic stress disorder, drug and alcohol issues, and so I think that that's the kind of individuals that we're looking at that potentially will be able to receive the intensive treatment, intensive addressing of those issues through the court system to try to help them get through those issues and be productive within society. And so that's really what we're looking to try to do here. I think we can be successful and it will be successful. So we look forward to doing this, and I think it can be very much a benefit to the county and to the state. So I think that, we've talked before about the specialty courts and the issue of, do we think we're just focusing on certain people or whatever else? But what I would say, it is intensive supervision. I mean, it's almost, a lot of people would say it's more difficult to get through this than just regular probation. If you're only being seen, say, once every other week or once a month versus coming in every week and having a probation agent that's out there in the field seeing you, either daily or, every other day or weekly, it's definitely intensive supervision. It's supervision that's ensuring that they're not getting involved in drugs or alcohol or doing something else, driving while under the influence of the drugs or alcohol, all those things that we need to make sure those positive steps they're taking to be successful. So We think it's a good program and will be a successful program, and so we're asking for support from the council.
And this all goes to reducing the recidivism in our facilities as well, correct?
Right, without question.
Yeah. And that's worked really well in drug court, right, Judge?
It has, keeping people out of jail, keeping people out of prison, keeping children out of foster care,
Yeah.
having children in foster care for less time, having children not return to foster care. It turns, people that would otherwise be in prison into productive, tax-paying citizens who support their family and really just meaningfully participate in the community.
So just for the public, for them, that it's been a while since we talked about a drug court and what that does, but it, you're asking for an investment here in this, but the investment, what we've been able to show is that investment has actually been more beneficial to our taxpayers than what the alternatives are.
Pay $1 now, save 22 later.
Yeah, because if we want to do this, or are we going to, like you said, when it gets into issues when we have to take children away from families, that isn't cheap, right? And then our jails are full, and so these are, just from the public standpoint, these are investments, I think. Grant.
So it says State of Minnesota, 7th Judicial District, the 84,000, is that, that's their contribution to is that an annual ongoing thing, or?
No,
can you
Don's the money man, so.
So we were, yeah, you're
comment
going
on that, Don?
Yeah, that is actually the funding we've got now is thanks basically to our drug court that's already in place. So the state and the local funding that we have is annual. I mean, that's every year we can count on that money. So,
and that comes from the state.
Yep.
What's the local funding portion on here? Or does
That's
that
the funding
represent-
for our probation agent for half her salary, and then also some local fundings for incentives and things.
Okay.
But
So that's already coming from the county?
Yep,
then,
because we're going to have the same probation agent that does drug court is going to do veterans court too. So.
Do you have any idea how many clients you expect to?
The goal is we'll have 30 total, 20 in Clay County and 10 in Becker, the same as our drug court.
So the remaining dollars then that you're looking for that you have not raised yet is the 66?
Correct.
And what kind of a cost share are you suggesting or looking at between us and Bedford County?
Well, we're looking at the bulk of that money we're going to try to get through grants,
Okay.
grant applications. I think what we're asking for this year is, from the county, is 10,000.
Okay.
What we
Yeah, and that's half of what we asked for drug court. Reason that it's that amount this year is we're getting kind of a.
When you say this year, we're talking 15, right?
15,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
We're getting the benefit of economy, so to speak, by kind of piggybacking our Veterans Treatment Court with our drug court. Now, so you know what it will look like, they will not be run together. They are two separate courts, but the fact of the matter is there's a lot of crossover in terms of the personnel that serve on the two teams. So we'll hold both courts on Wednesday. We'll staff our drug court first. We'll then do our drug court session. We'll then staff our Veterans Treatment Court, and we'll hold our Veterans Treatment Court session. With a lot of the same personnel already there, just staying a little bit longer, it'll be more efficient to really run both programs. There will not be crossover between the two. It's not appropriate to cross the two populations over. It will be entirely separate, but we're really going to get a maximum economy there by having the two together.
And I think maybe just to highlight the difference too, so you just realize, I mean, obviously drug court is focused on people that have serious drug addiction. The Veterans Court could have many different things. I mean, it could have alcohol issues alone, or there could be other crimes that we've typically excluded out of drug court, but we may consider and say, well, we need to really look, this individual may have some violent tendencies or has had some issues. I mean, we're not talking serious violence, it's just clear, so we're not talking attempted murders or other things, but if they've had some assaultive behavior, but they're having issues with mental health and that type of thing. And so that's the difference that the Veterans Court is bringing together the VA, bringing together mental health providers, bringing together drug and alcohol coordinators and things such as that. So that's some of the differences that we're...
So Brian, who makes that call as to who's going to be accepted and who's not, based on the crime level that you just talked about?
So it'll still be the team, well, two things. I mean, as we look at ultimately the county attorney's office, and the county attorney has a veto power to determine. I mean, if we look at it and it's too serious of a crime, we won't allow it to go into,
Right, okay.
into a veterans court, just like we don't allow certain cases to go into drug court. We have the ultimate say just because we have the ultimate decision-making power and responsibility under the executive branch. And so that same thing will be there, but at the same time, we'll look at ones, we'll talk about it within our own office, and then we'll present it to the team as we do in other cases. And if we think they're appropriate, we'll allow them or get them into the veterans court. If we don't, then we would look to veto them.
And our veterans in the criminal justice system are really uniquely situated as compared to others because they are eligible for benefits through the VA. They might not be taking advantage of those benefits. They're struggling. They come into contact with the criminal justice system. That's the tie-on to access and tie them into services both through the VA and in the community, and then provide them ongoing supervision and support so they can ultimately be successful.
Don, I was just going to ask, in looking for grant money for this, does the VA provide any grants for that type of thing, or the veteran service clubs like the Legion or VFW, those type things? They sometimes have money to sponsor this type of thing.
I had talked to Clancy Barnhart, who was the Veteran Justice Outreach Officer at the Fargo VA, and she thought there was some funding out there. She has since left. There's a new person in that position, and I haven't spoken to her yet about funding issues.
Another way our Veterans Court will be unique from drug court is we're going to set up a mentorship program. So we will have veterans acting as mentors to participants in drug court. So I throw that pitch out to you because we will be establishing that mentorship program. You know, that is a really uniquely bonded group, very invested in each other and in each other's success. And, you know, veterans can interact with other veterans in a way much more meaningful sometimes than they can with others. So we're going to incorporate that. If any of you are aware of anyone that would be interested in participating in that mentorship program as a mentor, let us know.
Well, I think that would be worthy of talking with Tom, too, from the
Yep,
VSO office.
absolutely. Tom will be a great resource
Yeah,
for us in that
he'll be
regard.
a great resource. But, John?
So you're asking for 10,000 from Clay County for the 2015 budget. You're asking a similar amount from Becker, or is it?
We'll ask 5,000 from
5,000?
Becker. Yeah,
And
because
then the rest
they
you're
do
gonna
half the participants there.
Right, and the rest you're going to seek grants funds for.
Yes.
What if you don't get the grant funds? Are we coming back to us later, or how is that going to?
Well, we don't really, I mean, having it be our first year, we won't be, you know, at maximum capacity for Veterans Treatment Court. It's going to take us a while to build. We don't know how our two courts will flow together in terms of, you know, being less expensive to run two than one here and one here. So I think we'll be okay for next year. We're not planning on coming back for more money. Believe me, though, before we allow our court to fail, we'll come back.
So
and ask for more money
what you're
if we
saying
need
is
to.
you're not going to be set up to be establishing a full year's budget starting on day one anyway, so.
Not likely.
Yeah.
No, we kind of work our way
Right,
up.
right, okay. Yes, Frank?
Have you got any projections as far how much, I mean, I see what it's gonna cost. Have you got any projections of what it's gonna save? I mean, I know in drug court, I think there was some talk about for every person that you keep out, you save so much money. Is there any projections as far as what you think you save? Instead of a person being in prison, you know, what's the difference in cost?
Well, I expect the numbers will be very similar to what our drug court savings have been. And those are in the, you know, I think over $2 million now in prison avoidance costs since we started the program, so.
And that's just prison avoidance costs. I mean,
Right.
there's the other costs that, you know, just right off the top of my head, I laid out earlier, in addition to the fact that not only are these individuals not a drain, but they are meaningfully contributing both to the community and their families.
So, how about the 10,000, Brian? Have you got a magic pool there for the?
Where's your magic, Brian?
What line item was the drug court on in the,
What comes out of it's in my line item in my budget.
Yes, it is.
well, your
And
budgets just went up then. For every dollar you get, you gotta save, Brian, for every dollar you get, you gotta save one.
Right.
Well, we'll have to work it out.
right, and of course, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Whalen, the easy answer is you have not approved your final budget, so the easy answer is we would take $10,000 out of reserves because we aren't going to raise the levy anymore with it, or the hard question is to find other places to find the money.
I would like to suggest that we take a look at revenues over expenditures from last
For
year to
this
cover
year.
the 15 investment, and then we can move on from there.
And that would be out of reserve, basically, so yeah.
And next year, we will come before you in a timely manner while you're in the
Under the
budgeting
budget
process.
plan, yeah.
It's just our court wasn't even approved then, so we didn't have authority to ask for anything at the time.
Chair, I move the request of $10,000 from Veterans Court.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. We'll get it in the budget.
Thank
One
you
other
very much.
question. Didn't we also start a domestic abuse court?
We have a domestic
Is that-
violence court, which is,
that-
yes, we do
Is that
domestic
working
violence court.
as well, or how?
It is. We just had Dr. Thompson from NDSU do a recidivism report for us. He presented that about 8 weeks ago to our team. Additionally, he just prepared a report on victim and offender perspectives in terms of domestic violence court. I just got that last week and honestly haven't had an opportunity to review it, but I've heard positive feedback.
Okay,
So
good.
That's probably a busy court, huh?
that is a very busy court, very busy, with it's an entirely different perspective, entirely different mission and focus than.
How many
our
are you
treatment
dealing
courts.
with on a weekly basis there, roughly?
You know, it varies. We do between a dozen and 26 just for post-sentence review hearings between 8:30 and 9. And then after that, it's between 25 and probably 40 just regular court hearings. Now, those are hearings that would be happening anyway. They just all happen at the same time in the same place, but it is a busy, busy morning.
Well, it typically takes from 8:30 right through noon or 12:30, so it's.
At least 11:30,
Okay.
yeah. It's,
Thank you. Thanks
All
for the
right,
good
well,
work.
thank you.
thank you, gentlemen.
You bet.
Have a great holiday.
Yeah, you too. Come back and see us again. We haven't seen you in a long time.
I know. And you know what? I do want to say something. One of the things that I've had the opportunity to do since being a judge is travel to some other places and do court there. And I just have to say, I really appreciate how much respect and consideration the court gets from this board in terms of cohabitating in your courthouse and working together. And it's just really, I see what goes on other places, and it just makes me step back, take pause, and say, oh, thank you.
So are we doing
thank
something
you.
right or something
You
wrong?
are doing something right. So thanks for the support and respect you give us here at Clay
You
County,
bet.
because not everybody does that. Thanks, gentlemen.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna get, pardon me? Yeah, I know, we're a little bit early here. I'm gonna get Tom in here. It's an add-on, it's just a real quick one here, hopefully. We're gonna go to the addition on the create a new VSO position. And Brian, I don't know if, and Darren, we've been meeting for quite some time regarding the staffing in the VSO office, and through our PIC committee, we've come to the conclusion that we really need to create a new position. While creating one, we're going to also be eliminating one.
Right.
Tom, if we're on agenda addition here, can you just briefly explain what your request was to this point?
What we really found that we needed is a veteran service representative, a type of person that can do more of the type of things that I do throughout the day, not just administrative and secretarial things, but more actual one-on-one with people and doing counseling and doing claims and those types of negotiations. And that comes at a much higher level, of learning, and it takes a lot longer to acquire those kind of skills. But the influx of veterans that we've had has pretty much put the demand on us for some years now to go there, and we have actually evolved to that position over time out of necessity. And so we are asking to have that position be removed but then replace with a veterans representative. Veteran
So
service
we're removing
representative.
the Veterans Benefits Coordinator
Yeah.
position and establishing a new
Veteran service representative.
Veteran Service Representative.
That would be more in line with what I would be doing myself.
Okay. And that's kind of the middle ground between going from having a full VSO and a half-time VSO to having something a little bit closer to half. The only difference between this person and a half-time VSO will be that they don't need the qualifications of being a veteran.
Correct.
Everything else, we want them to be.
In this state, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so, and our committee has agreed that, our Personal Issues Committee agrees that that's what we should do moving forward. And,
What's the cost difference?
well, that's to be seen. Right now, we'd be looking at going from grade 12 to grade 14. And then it's just a matter of where on the step we end up being. So that's something that, you know, depending on who we get in there, Tom will have to come and talk to us about that, so.
I'll move to approve the position.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And authorization to fill that position.
Yes.
That would be part of my
Yeah.
motion.
Yes,
Yes.
okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's to advertise and fill.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That meets your second. All right. Any further discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right, Tom, so Darren will get that published, and I think we have a 7-day period
Okay, yeah.
for publishing, once he gets it ready. And then we can have you back to talk, well, you gotta fill it, you gotta
Yeah.
see who applies. All right, very good. Thank you, Tom.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Yep. Okay, we'll move into, we're still a little bit early, we'll move into our 9 o'clock item, and Lori is here. And this is a request by the city of Morehead to purchase tax forfeited property. Good morning, Lori.
Good morning. The city of Morehead has requested to purchase 8 of the tax forfeit lots that went forfeit this year. And so I'd just like permission to do that. We initially had some concerns. They were coming in at $500 per lot, and the assessed values of some of those lots were more than that. So we requested documentation as to the cost that they had into it, and they did provide sufficient documentation, so we think that the $500 per lot is a fair price for those.
So this allows them to potentially recoup some of their
Correct, yeah.
losses? Is that
Right.
why he's being delinquent, is that?
Right, there's some $71,000 worth of delinquent specials on those lots. And so if we sold those on the tax sale for, just say even $50,000, all of that money would go to the city to cover those delinquent specials, except for less our administrative expenses.
Okay.
I'll move to approve.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? And this kind of meets that deal where it has to be for the public good too, or is that doesn't? is
Not
even-
in this case.
It's not even a requirement?
Not in
Okay.
this case.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you very
got
much.
anything else today?
Well,
Okay. Oh, later. Let's see. We're running ahead of schedule here. Kathy, let's, you ready to go? You come up early, okay? So we have a request to replace vacant public health administrative support position and upgrade position to an office service manager. And this is similar to what we just did with the BSO.
Okay.
So go ahead, Kathy.
Good morning. Yes, we have a vacant administrative support position, so we're looking at the restructure. Part of it is with our 4-county community health board restructure that will be official January 1st. Clay County Public Health will have quite a bit more responsibility in the fiscal management of that 4-county, all the contracts and grants. And we also have the technical assistance we need for our public health documentation system, so we'll need someone that can take a lead in that, which Mary has been managing, and she really won't have the time to do any of that. So we also will have some revenue to offset this position. We have taken over the food pool and lodging licensure and tracking of all that. We haven't done that through public health in the past, and there will be some revenue from those licensure things that we can use to support staff person that will be managing that, as well as we'll have a little bit of funding from our local public health grant. So we have a couple of resources to support this position. Darren has figured out the calculation, excuse me, the calculation from the administrative support person. She was a long-term employee, so she was quite a ways down on the scale. And then this office services manager, which we are requesting, will come in the first 3 steps, depending on the experience. So budget-wise, we really only have about $1,200 that difference between those 2 positions. So that's pretty manageable with the revenue we'll be taking in. So our request is for a full-time office services manager. We have worked up a PDQ, and that's been graded by Darren, and that lands on a step 12. So our request is to fill that open support staff position with and restructure it to this office services manager.
And the grade that was before this, at the lower level, was a grade 10?
Correct.
So it's moved up to?
Right, to a 12.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we approve the request to hire a full-time public health office service manager.
Okay. Second. We have a motion and a second. And that does require it being opened up for...
Correct.
Are you doing it, is this internally or externally, or what are you doing?
Both.
Doing both? Okay, all right. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same, motion carried.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You're getting a little bit ahead here.
Adam's here, otherwise. He's here, I mean, if you want to move on to 9:15.
Yeah,
Whatever,
I just
okay.
don't know sometimes if the media wants to be involved with some of these or not, I don't know, so.
Very good.
And we don't have Brian here to do the adjust.
Do our
Let's do a couple committee reports, just to get kind of close. So, John, are you ready to go with the committee report?
Yes, I think so.
Thank you.
I had quite a few meetings this last week. We all attend, or most of us attended the public health meeting in Barnesville after our board meeting last week. This was the last meeting of the Clay Wilkin Public Health Board. It's dissolving at the end of the month, and we'll be starting with the four-county public health department instead. So it was an interesting meeting, and Frank chaired the meeting and did a good job. And it's been a good long run for this public health department. It's worked well together, and we thank the staff for making that happen. Then later that day, I had Felton Stewardship meeting, and as you remember, some of you were around at that time. About 12 years ago, we finished it, but we had conducted a study of the Felton Prairie gravel mines and prairie area that we own up in Keene Township, and this was something that took 4 or 5 years to study this thing, and we did a lot of work on it at that time with a lot of different partners and so on, and set up a long-term plan for the use of that area so we could get the maximum amount of gravel mined out of our pits while preserving the maximum amount of native prairie. And a very important project and a very careful one for us to be working on. And now it's the first time in a dozen years we went back and looked at that study to determine where we should go next with our gravel mining and so on. And so there's some possibilities that we're working on, and some things have changed in the law so that we now, if we want to sell part of that land for native prairie where there's minimal or no gravel resources, we could do it without violating the original deed that was restricted to gravel mining only. That law has been changed, and as of just this year. So that was an interesting discovery for us, that we might be able to make some ownership changes out there that will benefit both the state and the county. So we'll hear more about that as we study that a little closer. On Wednesday, I had a board meeting for the Historical and Cultural Society, and we've had a very good year there. And attendance has been up, membership is up, donations are up. We've done very well, and we're excited about the prospect for the future for that group. Had an executive committee meeting on Thursday for the Red River Basin Commission, and there we're struggling a bit with our leadership crisis. A number of people on the board and in succession for officers were defeated in their elections, so we're trying to scramble to figure out how to fill those positions according to our bylaws and so on. So more to be reported later on that one. 1:30 on Thursday, we had a surveyors meeting, and we're discussing the contract for Brian Rittenhouse is up, and his certification is up at the end of this year, and we're discussing whether or not we need a Suffolk County surveyor, and have determined that we don't think we do, and that we will take that money and invest it in a way to assure that we get as much cooperation and following of the law, which requires the recording of these corners, which sometimes there's not done. So we're working on that, and more there to be reported too. That evening, I had a meeting with the Barnesville Wellhead Protection in the watershed office in Barnesville, and every 10 years, the wellhead protection study has to be done for each of the municipalities, and that was the completion of Barnesville's. I think it's the last meeting, and we approved the study and the plan, and now it's up to public input to determine whether or not there's anything to change on it. But that meeting went well, and we're glad to be done with that program. So 10 years from now, there will be another study done. So I also had yesterday a Lakeland board meeting in Fergus Falls, and a finance committee meeting prior to that. So we had 2 meetings down there. Lakeland also is doing very well and functioning well, doing well financially, and we appreciate that, because there was a time not long ago when it was a real questionable future for them, and now they're doing very, very well. So yesterday also we had a tobacco-free meeting, and I'll let Kevin report on that. It was the most spirited meeting that I've been at in 20 years, I think. I think Kevin even got a little angry once in a while. And, no. But it was good. We ended up with a resolve, I think, that's got some possibilities for the future. So nobody got exactly what they wanted in our discussion, but I think everybody can accept, and that's what government's all about, is coming to compromise on something. So that'll be presented to you in the near future. That's it for my meetings.
Thank you, John. Grant.
And Frank and I were at a Heartland Trail meeting yesterday, and still having a lot of discussion as to whether the Heartland Trail, at least our portion of it, should be a regional trail versus a state trail, which it's designated right now. And we think we'll have some more funding possibilities in the future if it's a regional trail of significance. And then we've got 3 different alignments we're looking at for the trail itself through Clay County, and we're planning, MetroCog's planning on having at least 2 public meetings in later January, where we're going to try and encourage people that are interested, and maybe some of the townships that are along the alignments to come and look at those and give us some feedback. So that was it for me.
Thank you. Wayne.
On Tuesday, November 18th, the Local Advisory Council of Adult Mental Health. Routine business, then we had agency reports from the Mobile Crisis Center, which is a branch of Lakeland Mental Health, from Solutions, the Social Connection, Clay County Social Services, Lakeland Mental Health, and the National Association for Mental Illness, which acronym is NAMI. Then we reviewed the bylaws, policies, and procedures of the Local Advisory Council. Wednesday, November 19th, Clay County Collaborative Governance Board meeting. General business, we approved the new structure of the collaborative. This includes the work groups, advising administrative group, and the governance board. We approved and revised and updated the bylaws. We went over the 2015 fiscal year budget. On Thursday, November 7th, Lake Agassiz Rural Library, we had a full board meeting, routine business. 3 new board members were put on the board. Beverly Lake of Moorhead, Mary Daly, City of Moorhead from the council, and Daniel Stenzing of Clearwater County. We had the financial report, the director's report, then the executive committee was appointed for 2015, board member reports, and the full board okayed the reduction of its size to reflect 1 board member per 14,000 people. Friday, November 21st, Lake Agassiz Regional Library for Northern Lights Library Network executive meeting. Went over the lease at the present location at Townsite Center. Legal opinion in writing looks good for our possible withdrawal from the present lease and relocation. We discussed in proposal for funds for Lake Agassiz Regional Library and the Northwest Regional Library for funds for next year, and the Northern Lights reserves and finance and legal obligations rather look very good and to be in good shape, and we will very likely be donating several $1,000s to Lake Agassiz and Northwest for 2015. Tuesday, November 25th today, Personnel Issues Committee meeting, and I will let our chair speak on that. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right, Frank.
Last Tuesday, as John had already said, we had public health, which he reported on, and Felton Prairie after that. Thursday, we had an FMCOG meeting, MetroCog. And there we're looking at going paperless possibly, like some of the committees are doing. One of the items we looked at, again, the area was voted as a bicycle, got an award for being a bicycle-friendly people. We're taking applications for a senior transportation planner till December 12th. Later that day, I went to family health care, where we had election of board members. Executives that gave a report on grant applications and the grants that we've received. After that meeting, we had another executive committee meeting to discuss evaluations. Yesterday, Heartland Trail, which Grant reported on. Also, the thing on the Heartland Trail, instead of, we were looking at, getting funding to do the whole thing at one time, probably going to be tough to do, but if we do it in segments, probably from Moorhead to Glendon or from Hawley to Glendon, just doing parts of it, instead of doing the whole thing, looking at doing the whole thing, we just look doing parts of it, and may work out too. Last night I went to, at the Helmholtz Center, I went to the State Rail Plan. Dave Christensen from MnDOT was there, and he gave a very informative presentation on the rails in Minnesota, and it's just, in 1980 we had 9,000 miles of rails. We now have 4,449 miles of rails. There's been a lot of abandoned rails, these carry a lot of trains yet, they're, looking at the grade separation requests that Moorhead has, there's 12 grade separations requests for the state of Minnesota right now. So it's pretty tough, we've got to compete with those 12 grade separations. And another example it gave, of an oil car, a 100-car train with oil cars, it would take 440 trucks to haul that much oil, whereas on a train you got 2 people on there. If you haul that by truck, it would take 440 trucks to haul that across the state. So it just gives some very good information concerning the rail system. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Frank. Okay, I'll get through mine here and should be just about on schedule here. Last week I did have a debt write-off policy in regards to Health and Human Services and our auditor's office, and I believe we're talking about that today, so we can get into that at that point in time. I did attend the Clay Wilkin final meeting in Barnesville. On Wednesday, we had our Oakport Joint Powers Board meeting, And we approved a conditional use permit for a building for Burt's Trucking out on Highway 75, and we're thankful for them for expanding their business in Clay County. That will probably, and then we also got an update on we had some discussion about the hunting proposals that will happen in the annexation area in Oakport. And what's basically being requested is that it just stay the same as what it was before and fall under the direction of the DNR. So I think it'll work pretty good for right now. So I think the city council already acted on that this last Monday, I think. Then, as John said yesterday afternoon, we had a lively tobacco-free meeting. I don't know that I got mad, I just got very vocal.
There's a difference.
You were still civil.
Yeah, but yeah, I think, you know, through a lot of dialogue and back and forth, I think, you know, we respect what public health what they need to do from their perspective when it comes to smoking, and that's that nobody should smoke. And then kind of weighing that with not only our employees who are on our campuses, but the people who come and visit our campuses and what abilities they have. So I think we've come to an agreement on some changes there that would be satisfactory. I know I can speak to one of them. I know before it was a complete campus-wide smoke-free policy, which meant customers could not even go in their cars in the parking lot and smoke, and that part we've agreed to take out. There won't be any more open spots for employees or designated spots for employees to smoke anymore on the campus, provided this passes. And then the other thing that I suggested that, and this has got to be not necessarily come from public health, but through Darren's office in HR, is to look at, we had this requirement before that under 15-minute breaks, none of our county employees could leave county property. And, you know, if we're going to make this so our county employees can't smoke on county property, should they have the ability to leave on their 15-minute break? And so we're researching that aspect to see if there are any other issues that would not allow us to do that. So, but I think those are the big issues. And it's something that after a while I learned that I could live with. And so, but I think we'll talk more about it. Kathy, do you know when you're going to be ready to bring all that forward? Or?
Probably the first board meeting in December.
Okay. Okay, so that's, okay, all right. So, but I think that kind of covers that. Then this morning, our PIC meeting was really, it had just one purpose, and that was to deal with the issue that we dealt with today with the new position in the VSO office. We had been dealing with that at a number of PIC meetings, and we finally have come to hopefully a consensus and agreement there. We'll have to see how the hiring process goes. That concludes my reports. Brian, we'll wait for your report till the end. We'll move on to our 9:15 item, and that's the approval of a joint powers agreement establishing the Cass Clay Food Systems Advisory Commission. And part of that agenda item is then to also appoint Clay County Commissioner to serve on the Advisory Commission. And we have lots of people coming up.
I have a crew here.
All right. So, we have Adam Altenberg, right? That's Adam, okay. Okay. And Kathy McKay, are you going to join us?
I'm making a substitute.
I'm not mad at you. You can come up. Okay, so Kathy, and Gina, welcome Gina. And Megan?
Hi.
Okay. And who else do we have?
Noel Hardin.
Noel? Okay.
She's with the U of M Extension.
Okay.
So
Well,
that's
welcome.
my substitute for Kathy.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, you could have 5.
Okay, well, we could.
Okay, Gina, I'm assuming you're going to lead this off?
I'm going to start, and we do have a PowerPoint here. And you may recall, several months ago, we came to you about the Food Systems Initiative, Cass Clay Food Systems Initiative, and kind of did an overview of that. Everybody recall that? Kind of, okay. And then John's been involved in committee work with that as well. So we'll click on the next one. And so we want to talk about that today, but I want to put it in context with some of our other work, Partnership for Health, statewide health improvement program, you know, increase physical activity, increase healthy eating, decrease tobacco use and exposure. And just to kind of put in context, when we're talking about improving the culture of health related to food systems, and is that there's a lot of things going on, and there's also a big need for infrastructure and systems change and partnerships with that. So I've just got a list of different things we're doing in that context in the 4 counties. And then with that, I also want to put in context the larger picture that's happening in Minnesota, and that's the Minnesota Food Charter. And Noelle's going to speak just briefly on that.
Okay, Noelle, if you could kind of get that close to that
Sure.
mic. There you go. Thank you.
So as Gina said, I am Noelle Hardin, and I'm with the University of Minnesota Extension. Over the last 2 years, the university, as well as other agencies, the Department of Health, local public health, and many other entities have been involved with this initiative, the Minnesota Food Charter, which basically, it was launched about a month ago. I did bring one copy of it, and if you want more information about it, there's a website as well that you can visit and take one of those. Basically, it's a roadmap that was created with extensive public input. Thousands of Minnesotans participated in that process. And it outlines several strategies, including related to what Gina was talking about, more infrastructure that we can have in the state to support a healthier food system. And one of the pages in that document has strategies that are specifically for decision makers such as yourself. And 2 of those strategies, one of them speaks to creating local and regional food policy councils like the commission that we're talking about today. And that's seen as key to actually implementing the strategies that have been created by citizens in Minnesota that are in that document. And if you also want to know more about it, Commissioner Everett, I know, is very involved in this process as well. So I'm sure he could speak with you as well about that. So this is, I'm very excited to be here about the commission today because this is seen, like I said, as key to moving this work forward at the local and regional level.
And Commissioner Everett was, they did a kickoff in October in Duluth for the Minnesota Food Charter, and they had a little videotape of John speaking, I forget what it was. I mean, you know, it was so profound, I can't remember.
I haven't seen it, so.
But so.
You really gave a good impression.
It was very good. I just have a short memory. So with that, we're going to have Adam and Meg tell you more about what we're talking about today.
Thank you. My name is Adam Altsberg, and I'm with the Metropolitan Council of Governments. In 2013, MetroCog completed the Metropolitan Food Systems Plan. This is a plan that has resolutions of support from the City of Fargo, Clay County, and Fargo-Cass Public Health, and does a really good job at establishing a framework for understanding the components that make up the local food system, and also takes a look at some of the key indicators surrounding food access, health and nutrition, food security, and land use. The Food System Plan identifies 6 implementation target areas: economic development, food infrastructure.
I don't think they can hear you. Excuse me, behind yourself there.
Oh, can you hear me? Is this better? Okay. The Food Systems Plan identifies 6 implementation target areas, including economic development, food infrastructure, food access, outreach, urban agriculture. But for the purposes of time, I'd like to just kind of touch on this last one, and that's the development of a Cass Clay Food Systems Advisory Commission. Why do we feel the need to develop the commission instead of, say, a committee or just kind of working on issues on a case-by-case basis? Right now, we do have the Cass Clay Food Systems Initiative, but it really lacks the legislative authority to move forward with some of the food systems issues in the area. Most issues are done, are completed through task forces, which are great, but there's no real direction or guidance through the local area jurisdictions. We believe that with this commission, it would provide the necessary leadership and authority to move forward with some of the local food issues here, and also provide a better framework for target areas and initiatives identified in the Food Systems Plan. This flow chart just kind of shows the organizational structure of the Food Systems Advisory Commission. You'd have a food systems coordinator, Megan Murdahl. She would serve as facilitator and also help to develop resources, which we'll touch on in a moment. We also have the Cass Clay Food Systems Initiative, which would serve as a steering committee to provide information and guidance as required. And also MetroCog would serve as an administrative in an administrative capacity and also help with other aspects as needed. And with recommendations from this commission going to local units of government as required and requested. In order to develop this commission, MetroCog has worked with Fargo-Cass Public Health and Clay County Public Health to develop a joint powers agreement. This would be an agreement that would be signed by the City of Fargo and Clay County, which are entities responsible for public health here in the metropolitan area, with the overarching purpose of assuring that residents have access to safe, nutritious, and affordable foods. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Megan Murdahl to talk a little bit more about the commission.
Thanks, Adam.
All right, thank you.
So as Adam said, my name is Megan Murdahl, and I'm serving as the project coordinator for the Cass Clay Food Systems Initiative. And I'm just going to take a few minutes to walk you through some of the key elements that are laid out in that joint powers agreement. So the joint powers establishes 8 intentions for what this commission aims to serve to do. One of those being to assess the food system in the area, educate policymakers on food system issues, provide language on policies, support community wellness through various activities, cultivate partnerships and foster collaborative communication, encourage inquiries on food system issues, propose recommendations on ways to improve the food system, and then to oversee the implementation of the Metropolitan Food System Plan. The joint powers also gives 4 powers to the commission: to coordinate and prioritize food system and planning efforts, to enter into agreements with entities to provide assistance on food system activities, to expend available funds in accordance with any and all stipulations, and to perform other acts consistent with and necessary to implement the agreement. So who will be this commission? It will consist of 11 members. 6 of those will be appointed from the following government bodies. The City of Fargo approved this last night and appointed
Mike Williams.
Mike Williams to serve on the commission. We're also asking the City of Moorhead, City of West Fargo, and City of Dilworth to appoint a member, and then Cass, and then Clay County. There will also be 5 at-large members. These members will come from recommendations from our current steering committee, and then they'll be approved by the commission members. And what this at-large members will do will create an opportunity to provide some expertise, pull in people from the 2 counties that can provide some technical assistance on various food system issues. And then ex officio members, non-voting members of this commission, will be Fargo-Cass Public Health, Clay County Public Health, the steering committee, and MetroCog. So when will these meetings take place? Myself and Adam will coordinate with our members as to the time and place or time of these meetings. We anticipate that the first meeting will be the 3rd or 4th week in January of 2015, and that the meetings will be bi-monthly thereafter, anticipating 6 to 7 meetings per year. And these meetings will take place at the Fargo City Commission chambers. And then there are already some resources in place for this commission. So there are 3 task forces that have already been established by the initiative. Urban agriculture, one related to food access, outreach, and education, and another related to food infrastructure and economic development. And these task forces, again, are to provide technical expertise to the commission and help them move objectives forward. There also has been some grant funding secured from the Northwest Regional Sustainable Development Partnership to create a series of blueprints. These documents will be created to provide all the local jurisdictions on specific actions and language for policies that can help to strengthen the local food system and move some of the key issues forward. And then finally, there was funding that was secured from the North Dakota Department of Health to fund mine and Adam's time to work on behalf of this commission. So those elements are already in place to get this going. And I'll turn it back over to Adam now for our true purpose of why we're here today.
So with that, we are looking for a recommendation on 2 motions. The first would be the approval of a joint powers agreement that would establish the Cass Clay Food Systems Advisory Commission. And the second would be the appointment of 1 member from the Clay County Board of Commissioners that would serve on this commission. And if you have any questions for us, we'd be happy to answer them.
Mr. Chair, question. if we act on appointing a member from this commission today, which I'm sure we will, when, my Commissioner-elect Mojo could be interested in that, so when would you need the appointment of the actual person?
Well, like we said, our first meeting will probably be the third or fourth week in January.
Okay, so you don't need a name of a commissioner today then? Or you would like one?
We would like one, just so we can start to coordinate schedules to figure out when would be a good time for the different members from the different units.
Okay, thank
Units
you.
of government.
We can talk about that in a minute here, I think, too. Has Jenny reviewed this joint powers agreement?
Yes, she has. Yeah.
Our county attorney?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Jenny, I was kind of wondering. Yes, Jenny has.
Yeah, okay,
and Brian-
yeah, I'm sorry, yeah.
Brian has too.
Okay, all right. So, obviously, when it comes to something, when I start hearing about expending funds, I have questions on that. And so, so on 4.2 under powers, to expend available funds in accordance with any else, including funds received on behalf of the commission through voluntary grants, which you talked about some of those things. Is there any requests to be made of the government entities to put funds into this?
No, I mean, I'm not saying it won't happen in the future.
Right.
But we, as you know, we look for funding as much as possible outside of
Sure.
the county jurisdictions. So we've had, and I think what's great about this, the partnership here, of course, Fargo Cass Public Health, and then the Northwest Regional Sustainable Development is on the Minnesota side. So we're looking for every funds available, and that was, I don't know if Adam, if you want to say anything about that piece of the joint powers agreement where it talks about the funds. I think it's just.
I think you covered it, yeah.
Yeah, and that brings me to page 6, where it talks about the general expense account and the project expense. And then for the purpose of the funding general expenses for the administration and ongoing operations shall be established by the parties and approved in connection with the annual work program, a general expense account. I'm assuming that general expense account is to cover the administrative things that you're talking about, where the grants are now going to pay for? Or what is that in this?
That's correct. And if there's any projects that would be coming up, that's where
Okay, so
that's the purpose of the work.
So you would have to, in order to spend project expenses, your committee would have to generate the revenue somehow, whether it's coming to the boards or finding grants or whatever.
True.
Because I don't see where there's any other money available to do anything right now, other than the grants that are there to cover your time, right? Okay.
Yeah, we understand.
Okay, right, I just wanted to clarify that. Frank?
I have one question, page 5 there, that ex officio membership. I see Noel's here today, so is the University of Minnesota going to be part of that, or?
Yeah, the current steering committee, the group that's been kind of working on this from its beginning includes Fargo Cass Public Health, Clay County Public Health, Extension North Dakota, and Extension of Minnesota, a community member, and then that's basically it, right, Kim? Okay. So that's kind of the staff of it. So we're going to help staff it.
Okay, so the University of Minnesota is involved.
Extension.
Right, Extension is University of Minnesota, in Minnesota, and then we have North Dakota.
All right.
I'd just like to speak in favor of this process. I've been meeting with this group for, 3 years, 4 years? I don't know, quite a while. And it's exciting. We've come a long ways on this thing, and with MetroCog's involvement, it was a very good partnership. And we certainly have a partnership with the public health and with Extension. And there's just a lot of producers, farm producers, and markets. So there's a number of partners that have been here to discuss these issues for a long time, and I think it's really a good step forward. A number of other cities and metropolitan areas have done this around the state and nation, and it's good. One of the things that surprised me is when we look at maps, they talk about food deserts, and for those of us who have ready access to both finance and transportation to get to supermarkets, it's hard to imagine that there's food deserts in Fargo-Moorhead. But there are places, if you don't have a car and access to transportation, there are places that people have a very difficult time getting their food supply, even in the city here. So I think this is something that'll work towards alleviate that problem and helping people to understand the need for good quality food for everybody. So I would really encourage us to participate.
I'd just like to add one thing to that, too. The commission is here to help the jurisdictions problem solve different issues as well. So, example, the chickens issue in Fargo is the big one right now. So the opportunity there to kind of research the pros and cons and make recommendations to the jurisdictions to make decisions, you know, I think it runs the whole gamut of the food system. So we're here to help you all make decisions.
Sure. Right. Brian, the entering into joint powers agreements, we have the issue of insurability. How would our insurance be handled as Clay County's concerns would be?
Well, Mr. Chair, that's a separate governmental entity when you form a joint powers agreement. And so that will have to be covered under MCIT for our side of it as a separate entity.
So we have things in process to make sure that coverage happens then? I don't know where we would get into trouble, but
yeah,
if we're forming an entity, you better have insurance.
That's exactly right. That will be a function of that entity to have that insurance, because they do form a separate governmental entity, and that was part of our discussion. In fact, Mr. Chair, we haven't talked either. Getting a little scary. I'm getting to know you guys too well. But
I think it falls under MetroCog too, so I'm not sure how that fits into the.
But that'll be something you will need to. That's a very good observation.
Well, we just need to make sure that when Clay County joins something, that and there are potentially decisions that are made by an entity that we're a part of, that we need to have proper insurance coverage. That's all I'm saying. So how we establish it needs to be worked out to have coverage.
Mr. Chair, I would be interested in being on this commission, as I am not doing a great deal of traveling out of town at this time and probably in the near future. But then again, we have two other board members and yourself.
You know what, I would, my thought on this was, and you happened to bring it up before, and that's Commissioner-elect Mojo, and where I see this, she comes from a producer ag background, and it's always nice when you can have somebody with that knowledge when you're dealing with food to be there. John was instrumental, and I'm sure it was partly because of his background. And I'm sure all of us would like to serve on it, but it would seem to me that it would be something that would be very good for Jenny to be on. And because they're not meeting until January, I don't see why we could not make that appointment.
I didn't quite get an opportunity to finish. If you need an appointment today, I would be interested. Deferring come January to Commissioner-elect Mojo if she would like to have that position, because it has been where John's was. So if you can wait on an appointment until January, if you have one today, we can't appoint somebody who's not on the county board at this time.
You're not anticipating meeting between now and January, are you?
No, we're not.
So I think.
Maybe we could defer
We
appointing.
could appoint the District 3 Commissioner.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I'll make that motion.
But we got to have the.
Well, we got to approve the.
Oh, we got to do that.
We got to do the big one first.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I move we approve the joint powers agreement depending upon our county attorney taking a look at it and saying it is all right to go forward.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Mr. Chair, I'll follow up with Adam and make sure that we cover that insurance issue so
Very
that
good.
there's absolute clarity on that.
That's part of the motion.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'll make that motion to appoint the District 3 Commissioner to that board.
All right, we have a motion to District 3 Commissioner. Do we have a second? We have a second, okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Okay, so if you have activities that go on between now and December 31st, it'll be John, and after that, it'll probably be Jenny unless she protests that.
Thank you.
That judge, so, all right, thank you very much.
Thanks for being here.
Yep.
Be sure to send us issues if you have some. So.
Okay.
That's a good plan. We can appoint her to all kinds of things before she...
She doesn't get a vote. Okay, so next we have our sheriff is here. Our next item is the reestablishing of the K-9 program. And so we have Sheriff Berquist, and we have Matt, and we have Brian. Good morning to you all.
Good morning.
All right, Sheriff.
Okay, yeah, we are here hoping to move forward with our K-9 program and to get your approval to do it. I do have a breakdown of the cost, but basically for the startup costs, it's right around $26,000. And we currently have about $32,000 in our donation account. So those costs would be covered by that. Plus, there's always the yearly costs for the deputy who's got the dog, and that's right around $4,500. But if you do want the breakdown of where we spend the $26,000, I can give you that, or I don't know if you guys.
But that's all,
Yeah, I think
that's
I
all
can
covered,
cover
right?
Yeah,
And I
yes.
think you got it.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's, you've got that covered through the contributions. And that's-
Correct.
Those are one-time
Yep.
costs, yeah. All right.
If you have any other questions, we just kind of want to get it going so we can get in the class, which is in February. So it's been, Sheriff, since 2012, since you've had a K-9? Yes, I believe that's, yep. You know, and I'm certainly a supporter of that and think it's, a necessary program for the sheriff's office, so. Unless anybody else, I'd make the motion that we approve this.
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same?
Thank you.
That's done.
That's done. Now the good.
One comment, have you gotten contributions from Barnesville Lions? I know they've got money and they're looking for projects to fund,
Well,
so this would be a...
I had one time spoke at, I think it was when they had their convention in Monoman, and I thought I got all of them, but I don't remember if we got any from Barnes.
did.
Okay.
Okay, but I know that we've been discussing at meetings how to spend the money. we
Yeah,
get,
I guess
so
I
it's,
did go to their meeting, yes, they did give me some money.
Okay,
So,
but come back again, too. I don't know.
Yeah, we're probably gonna, I've asked them that we might come back again just to help,
Yeah. Okay, good.
And the Lions like, I said, they do the C&I dogs. I said, now you
Right.
can do the capture dogs.
That's right.
All right, we got two more issues here. You might think you have one, but you have two.
Well,
Brian, we
does.
have a request for you on. Okay, all right, yeah, the word travels, huh? Okay, so our agenda addition is the authorization to purchase a van for the sheriff's department. Brian, are you going to talk about that?
Yes, I sent out, and this is just a normal replacement for our vehicles. I sent out to get a preliminary bid on them, on the state contract. And Nelson Ford out of Fergus Falls has the contract this year for the Ford vans. And the problem was that we had to order the vans by November 14th to be able to get it within that April-May timeframe. Otherwise, they're going to shut the factory down for 3 months to make a new model. So then we would not get that vehicle until probably August or September. He already had ordered one vehicle, and he said that we could buy that vehicle, but I'd make the decision today to be able to buy it. So normally, I'd come to the board at the end of December, and then it would take effect first of the year. So again, this is in part of our replacement. We just had to order it soon, and we just had to get permission from the board if that's okay to be able to do that.
Yeah, so This is gonna fit in with your, what you have in your internal service fund and all that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, replacement, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the request to buy this vehicle today.
All right. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Brian, do you want to, we pulled that armor issue off of consent. Commissioner Gross had just requested just give a brief summary again of what it is.
Yep. Again, that proposal is just a preliminary plan to do the armor study for Clay County. Basically, it's going to be a study and a recommendation of where we need to go in the future in reference to the armor system. The armor system is the Allied Radio Alliance. I can't remember. Grant, you got to help me out here.
I think you're right.
Yeah, it's the 800 system that the state of Minnesota has.
Okay.
And this, basically what this is just, it's a company that's going to come in and do a study. It's going to recommend 3 different phases of where we should go. Should we do it all at once? Should we do it piecemeal? How much it's going to cost? How it's going to affect, and all that good stuff. So this is just a study. It's nothing to do with saying, yes, we are going to go. Once we get the plan done, come back up to you guys again, and then we'll talk about it and then figure out where we need to go.
Okay.
And the payment on this, ECN is going to cover all the expense on this. It's not a grant. The bills come to me, I send it to ECN, and then they pay.
Very good. Okay, very good. Thank you.
And a big piece of that is when that study is done, the cost of it will be $1 to $1.2 million. It could be, at some point, different counties have done different things in the state of Minnesota, where certain counties have just purchased equipment, and this is user equipment, all the portables and mobiles. Certain counties have purchased that just for the sheriff's office. Some have purchased it just for law enforcement, like sheriff's office in Dilworth and Glendon. Some have purchased it for everybody, law enforcement, fire, EMS. We've been trying to tell those communities that have police departments, fire and EMS, be prepared that there may be some costs that you have to come up with in the next couple of years. And I think we're going to continue to remind them that be prepared. We don't know how much this is going to cost, who's going to pick up the tab, if anybody. So at some point, there'll be a decision that'll have to be made by this board about who's going to receive funding for this, for the year's equipment. Maybe it's a portion of it, maybe it's all of it, maybe it's none of it, so.
It just almost sounds like a mandating yourself, we're gonna do this, and then
No.
you're gonna have to.
No, it's not. This is just a study. There's not no mandate. We'll come back with the plan, and if we think this is the right way to go, it'd be up to your decision, and we decide, yes, we will be.
This is something that years ago, the state wanted the entire state to be on the system. And in our particular region in this, because I remember back to when I also served on that Northwest, whatever it is, that
Radio board.
yeah, radio board, that it was determined for us at the time that the armor deal wasn't for us. So now I suppose as time's gone on, there's some changes to that. Now the good part of it is the towers are all in, right?
Correct, yeah.
Well, and that was the deciding factor for most of the counties in northwest Minnesota. It costs so much to get on this program,
Right.
because we were going to
Right.
fund all the towers.
Right.
Now, finally, the state has provided all that infrastructure.
Right.
And of the 14 counties, we're about the only one remaining that isn't on it yet. And it's good timing for us, because our current system is aged enough, we have to look at replacing it. Now we're not buying all these building these towers ourselves. It's there. We just have to provide the user equipment.
So Matt, our investment that you're talking about to get this new equipment, we have some of those funds, and that should be set up through the internal service fund.
We do, because we own a tower at the landfill right now. We have user equipment. We have shelters, and we pay electricity. If we go to this armor system, we don't need those towers. We don't need the shelters. We don't need, because the state as providing those for us. We will need to buy new portables and mobiles, but like you said, Commissioner Campbell, we already have internal service funds to replace that anyway.
Right, so it's not like this, we're gonna have to be finding $1 million of new money here
Right.
for Clay
No,
County.
not totally, but there's,
Yeah.
the state of Minnesota will pay, generally what they're doing now is they'll give a grant to the region, it's like $1 million for a region, and you can use that to migrate to Armor. Now next year, I think in Beltrami County, they're gonna go, so next year they could probably get a lot of that money. Now, the year after that, if you guys decide we're gonna go that road, we'll request to try to get some of that money.
Okay.
Now, you're looking at the infrastructure, the connectivity between us and dispatch.
That was my next question.
That's where that money would go to.
Okay.
There's no money that is laid out for any mobiles or portables.
Okay.
But again, there's also fire grants out there, so we'll have to look at that for EMS and fire. And if we go together, the countywide, to try to get a fire grant to pay for this, that's another possibility.
Because, back when I was on that committee, that was the other thing that I remember was the communication ability between what this new system is versus what we currently have through dispatch. Are they going to talk to each other okay when we go to the Armor system?
Yeah, there should be no problem with
Okay.
that. That connectivity will be at our dispatch period. Now,
Okay.
how we can connect with North Dakota will be the same way we do it right now with State Patrol, because they're on Armor system and we're on VHF. So
Right.
what's going to happen, unless they switch two at the same time, which we're, kind of trying to coordinate that too.
Mhm.
North Dakota and Fargo, they have to go to a different system too. So maybe the timing will work out. If not, we'll put a patch system together where again, it's seamless. You talk into one radio, it gets transferred to another radio and we can talk to them like we do right now with State Patrol.
So has there been dialogue with Cass County or the Joint Dispatch on what our plans
Yes.
are, and should they follow the same, try to follow the same plan?
Actually, North Dakota, the whole state is doing the same study
They're doing
because
the
they
same.
gotta get, their
Okay.
system is way too old and they're gonna be doing about the same exact thing.
Because this all came about as a result of the I-35
Yeah.
bridge
yeah.
collapse, right? When everything
Right.
was in total chaos there and
Yep.
different agencies couldn't talk to each other.
Right.
Okay.
And this is a big deal, but you gotta look at our radio system, it's getting old.
Mhm.
A lot of that stuff, our infrastructure that we have, repeaters and stuff like that, Motorola won't even make anymore. They'll fix it for the next couple of years, after that, you're not gonna be able to get parts.
Well,
Same thing with our mobiles and portables.
it makes sense that we should move forward with the plan.
When did we go with the current system? It seems like a couple years ago.
It seems like
It
it,
does.
yeah.
We started that 2003. There were several grants that we applied for throughout,
Okay.
there was different federal grants, probably 3, 4 major one. The last one was, I think, in 2004, was a large interoperable grant with the
Yep.
city of Fargo and Cass County. That funded a lot for us.
So we were, this all started, and that was all when we started becoming part of the Northwest Regional Radio Board too, wasn't it? Wasn't it all that same time period? So however-
Yeah, and, the theory then, and as it is now, is interoperability.
Right.
We're not, the state or the federal government was not going to hand out funds if you couldn't talk to your neighbor, because we all respond to
Right.
disasters, and we still do today. In fact, having some experience with floods, when we have had Hennepin County, Ramsey County, Minnesota DNR, State Patrol.
All here.
Here, and in 2009, we were trying to collect radios so we could give those entities radios to talk. Under the Armor system,
You would need
they use their own equipment, you have different bands. So it is a much better system for interoperability.
All right, very good. So the request is,
And again, the contract, again, is just, he has 45 to 90 days to complete the contract. And Jenny reviewed the contract, and she said, yeah, everything looked good, I'm okay from that.
Move to approve.
okay, we have a motion and a second on the Armor project. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Thank you for the update.
All right, that should take care of it. Thank you, guys.
And we'll keep you
Good.
informed on this.
Thank you. Let's, before, we're kind of running behind now, but if we could just approve the Trojan Takedown Club's application.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. We're going to take a short break. 5 minutes, please, and we'll reconvene our meeting here, and we'll go to the 9:40 item. We're running a little behind. And this is approval of the accounts receivable write-off policy for Health and Human Services, and we have Rhonda Porter and Sandy Thorne and Lori.
All right, good morning.
And good morning, and we did have a committee that was established to go over this, and I think we're ready to present the policy here.
We did have a
Right.
committee, and we've met several times, and in addition to, one of the things the committee looked over is we did collect some policies from other counties similar to ours, and looked at those policies, what made sense, and some of the state policies, and put together a policy that was sent out in your packet. So I'll just give a brief summary, and then Sandy's going to talk a little bit more about the details of the policy that we're proposing. But generally, what this is an accounts receivable write-off policy. The policy will allow us to remove from our collections books receivables that are going back 20-plus years. These are receivables that are in service areas that are mandated service areas, so whether we collect any fees or not, we're still obligated to provide the service. Some of these services are things such as child foster care, county-funded burials for our indigent population, and detoxification services for folks in our community that need that service. So again, their services we're mandated to provide, and in some circumstances, if there are fees we can collect, we try to do that. There's been some rules, state rule changes that, going back 20 years, most of those referrals were sent to collections. That's not the case anymore. If a family or an individual is on public assistance, those referrals do not go to collections for an attempt to recover any fees. So we're not going to be building upon these receivables in our system. This really is an effort to clean up what's been on the books for 20 years. Going forward, this will be a much more manageable situation. So I'm going to have, and again, this is, as we look at these receivables and apply the policy to the receivables currently on the books, none of the revenues that we'd be talking about were planned in the budget over the years. So it's not an impact to our budget and our bottom line as we move forward with this policy. So, okay.
In other words, it's been a normal budget expense through our normal Health and Human Service budget.
It has, yes.
And it's just that Lori's requirement is that we have to show it as a receivable till it's deemed uncollectible.
Correct.
Of which we put it in our budget because we already know it's going to be uncollectible.
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
So,
Yep.
okay, so it's not, this isn't anything, a new expense that the county is absorbing.
Right, yep, it is not.
All right.
Okay, so maybe we could start with questions, or if you like, we could Sandy could talk through a couple of some of the key points in the policy and then go with questions. Sound good?
Okay,
Just a high level.
a high level, because you've already read it. Yep. We have a lot of public assistance receivables, and those are dealt with by state policy, so we've been working with those over the years. But we've never really done anything with the county receivables. So we've kind of highlighted three main points. And the first would be then that receivables can be written off when the receivable reaches the statute of limitations. So we're going to try for a minimum of 6 years if there's no judgment in place, and 10 years if there is a judgment in place to collect on that debt. We're going to try and certify for revenue recapture, which is Minnesota tax offset. Sometimes we can get that through. Other times, if somebody's not a resident of Minnesota. They're not going to be known to their system. They won't take it, but we will continue to try and certify for 3 years. There's also, in number 3, if the person has died, if they've had the debt discharged, you know, the very specific things that make it impossible for us to continue to collect. We would also look at when the conditions in Section A have been met, then we would be looking at different dollar amounts for the level of approval. So if it's under $1,000, the collections officer can write it off at their discretion. If it's between $1,000 to $2,000, it would be reviewed by me, and anything over $2,000 would be reviewed by Rhonda, and then also brought to the board for final approval. We also included consider unusual circumstances, because there are situations, say the person who owes the receivable is incarcerated for a long period of time, that type of thing, where we know that the chances of us ever collecting, it's really not going to happen. So we did include that in this area also. So those are the areas that we wanted to look at for having the write-off policy. And then we would plan to document those write-offs and then annually provide that to the board, so that you're aware of what we're doing.
All right.
I just have one question on the billing statements.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where it says monthly statements will no longer be sent to a debtor unless, oh, wait a minute, was it 4 months? If 4 months have passed?
With no payment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I just wait 4 months, you're not gonna send me those letters anymore?
We send out a notice telling them that they still owe the debt, but we were spending hundreds of dollars a month sending out billing statements on essentially uncollectible debt. So that was years ago. We had started doing that when we were in a financial crunch,
Okay.
and it saved a lot of money.
So we still pursue it though? I mean, I think
Oh, yeah.
number three covers that. I think we still pursue it, you know, it's just that
Yeah.
we don't send out letters anymore.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
And we would like the ability, again, as Sandy said, under the 2C, kind of the unusual circumstances. We're going to look at those circumstances, and if it might make sense to continue sending statements, we'll do that. We'll look at some of those unique pieces to each of these, but again, having a standard policy in place for practice and consistency will be helpful.
Mr. Chair, and if I could say that's an administrative call on your part. Mr. Chair, I move to approve the proposed policy as presented to us.
Okay. We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Now, this was brought through our committee, and it was, we met a couple times, and ultimately, I think the language in there we're pretty pleased with. And I think it gives some, authority for smaller things to just go right away through administration to go ahead and deal with those. And if you get into larger amounts, they're going to be collected and annually brought before the board for approval to write off, so, right, is that correct?
Yep, absolutely, and I could just comment that I know Sandy and her staff have done hours of work already looking at some of this and looking at if you were to approve the policy as written, how would it apply to some of the receivables we currently have on the books. They've documented every one of those and how it meets the policy and how it might not meet the policy. So our goal was to, if the board approved the policy, to apply it right away and get this cleaned up before the end of the year. So we'd be coming back before you, maybe even next week, with the receivables that we'd like to write off per the policy, so.
All right, Lori, you're in agreement?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, very good. No further comments? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Approval to enter server hosting agreements for Caseworks electronic document management system with 7 Minnesota counties. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning. Let me start. Like I said, we're seeking approval to add 7 counties to our existing Caseworks hosted solution. I believe it's been a year or so ago we came before you seeking approval to add Isanti to the original hosted system that we did have. And I don't know, is it listed, the 7 counties?
The 7 counties are not listed, but I can let you know who they are. It's 7 counties to our north, so it's Marshall, Norman, Kitson, Polk, Red Lake, Roseau, and Monoman counties. So the hosting agreement that was sent in your packet is, the hosting agreement would be the same for all 7 of those counties. It's the same for, well, we did do some adjustments. We're going to update Isanti's, but it would be the same for Isanti. And then if you remember right, when we went into this project, it was a 3-county project between Clay, Becker, and Ottertail. So all of those counties with the new 7 then will be hosted here in Clay County.
We did make an adjustment on some of the fees, since many of these counties are much smaller counties.
Okay.
Polk County is the same as the other 4. The other counties are a little bit less for the, well, we're charging, it'll be $5,000 per county for the upfront costs, and that money is to be used to upgrade our infrastructure to accommodate the, the capacity.
And it's basically storage, isn't it?
Basically storage, yep. We are adding a little bit of some performance to the system too. We don't want to, we want to make sure we don't impact the performance of the whole system by adding other people. And then the ongoing costs are the same for Polk County, the $7,500 hosting fee and $4,500 per year for each for the remaining 6.
Licensing, is that an issue?
It's going to go for staff costs, licensing fees, and into an equipment replacement fund.
Oh, okay.
Have the other counties agreed to this, or are we?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, I have the, all 7 contracts right here already signed by their boards or their directors.
How much more capacity do we have if more counties wanted to join? Are we?
Well, theoretically unlimited.
Unlimited.
We could do all 87 counties if we wanted to. At some point, you're going to run into, it's not a capacity issue, it's more of a bandwidth issue. We would hit that before we hit a capacity issue.
All right.
I was at a meeting the other day and spoke to the director of Polk County Social Services, and they have just been really pleased with the communication they've had with our IT department so far as they implement Caseworks in their counties. As you know, we did that a couple years ago in our income maintenance unit, and I hear from our staff all the time, they don't know how they functioned without this solution. So these 7 counties are excited, and they've been very pleased with the communication and the support that they've already been getting from our IT department. So I think this is a good collaborative relationship.
All right.
So it sounds like it is possible other counties will seek to join us.
As long as we keep doing a good job.
All right.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
Brian and Lori. Revenues and expenditure update.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. You had asked, I better hand this out.
sent a couple of Let me see if this is around.
Do you have an extra one there, Jenny?
Oh, sure.
Kevin, do you have one?
I have one. Okay, Brian.
Yes, Mr. Chair, you'd asked for us to kind of keep an eye on this through the end of the year, so we know where we're at. And if you notice up on top, I put 83 to 91. That's kind of the time frame. If you notice, this was run on November 20th down in the bottom, so it's as up to date as you possibly can be. And then, but some accounts vary because it depends upon when their expenditures go out and things. So if you look on top here and just use the County Commissioners, Board of Commissioners for an example, if we're looking between that 83 and 91% of the expenses should be expended during this time period, you're at 85%. You're falling right in the range where we estimated your budget, or you estimated your budget would be, and you're falling right in there, and that's very good. And I've just highlighted a couple as we go down the line there. County Public Defenders. We're running over budget there. I am recommending that you add an extra $5,000. This seems a little higher. We look at, 2 to 3 year averages when we do budget those things. This year, for some reason, it's running a little bit higher. I know there's been lots of court cases, and that is such a fluid number. But fortunately, it isn't a huge volume of money over. I mean, they're $10,000 over at this time. But percentage-wise, it's quite high, but in the scheme of things, it's not so terribly high. As you move down there, and I didn't ask Lori about this, but if you look on the left-hand side, I highlighted in red under the auditors that the revenues there, what was estimated and what has come in is quite a discrepancy there.
Well, that's the mortgage registration tax that we collect and then give to the state, so
And then
we're
you
always a month
distribute.
off. So with the mortgage registration tax is showing everything that we've collected, and we still owe a big chunk of that to the state.
Okay, so that's why the revenues
Yep.
are way over. It's we've identified for the budget, only what we keep in it. And then right under that is motor vehicle, and I just highlighted that to show you that, you added a person there and then some hours last year, and they're running ahead of revenue even during the construction period and all that stuff. They've almost met their goal of what Lori projected would be their income, and so they've got a month and a half of revenues, basically. They're going to be over that 100%, which is, I can't say it's good. I mean, it's good for the balance in the budget, but what I'm saying is it's their projections on the fact that they're just busier and busier all the time, and so it was wise to add that person there. So, and then as you move down there, I highlighted the elections, and of course Lori can speak to that, but that's very simple. She went to budgeting the same amount every year rather than varying the amount per election year, so she will run 150% this year when there's an election, and then next year it'll be only 50% of what she budgeted.
Yeah,
So
and we have
it
paid
levels out.
for the majority of the big items. We've probably got a few stragglers to come in yet, but, so that's actually a pretty decent number at this time.
So if you run down your percentages, they're all falling in line there or less, which is very good. You get down to emergency management, I addressed this last time, but just to refresh your memory on that, their expenditures are up, but as you notice, they received a grant, so their revenue is also up to cover that, just similar to what you approved for emergency management today. So you go down to the bottom, I think they're all kind of running within the framework and the budgets, which is very good. You'll notice the expenditures are at this time about 80%, and that is favorable to the 83 to 91 category. If you look on the back of it, it just kind of continues on. If you look at the road and bridge, the only one that's maxed out, and that's highway construction. I'd like to say, well, that's because the construction season is over with, but you know as well as I'm sure there's bills out there, but that fund is tricky because they get state funds and they get approval for running over on certain projects, and we don't know until into the middle of next year how it actually is there.
Or we could have some of last year's stuff in there.
Yes, you
Could be
could.
right now.
Yeah, yes, you could. So, but Dave looks at his budget every month, and they're running very I mean, they're comfortable. If you slide down to solid waste, I highlighted another one at 222%. If you remember right, you made that payment, and I made a note down on the bottom there, made that payment to Prairie Lakes of $195,000, and that's why that line item budget is showing the increase on that. And then you jump down to internal service fund. If you remember, you approved 8 new road graders. That's quite a chunk of money.
Can we go back up to
Oh, you betcha.
solid waste for a
Yep.
minute? So we're basically, according to this report, we're taking that 195,000 out of the 2014 budget.
That's where it's been applied,
Right.
yes, and then we'll balance it off at the end of the year.
Yeah, but
Basically.
It's intended to come out of reserves.
it was intended to come out of solid waste reserves. So will there be a revenue item that goes to solid waste from, on the revenue side, that's transferring it from reserves to?
No, in effect, if you have an additional expense over your budget, it's going to come from reserves. So there's not actually a journal entry that gets made for that.
Okay. But the reserve, the solid waste reserve account has been reduced.
Okay.
Yes.
Right, is that right?
Correct, yes.
So on the books, there's 195,000 less available in reserves.
Yes.
Correct.
That's,
That's that enterprise fund, so.
Right.
Yeah.
right.
Any, oh, and then I did jump down, I guess that internal service fund, but I just wanted you to, just to remind you that I think there was 7 or 8 road graders that were purchased this year, planned event, and which draws on the internal sum, certainly takes out a lot more than you put in this year, but that's what it's designed to do. So I think we're in good shape for the year, so we'll know more at the end of the year, of course, but.
Everything's looking really on target
Yeah,
right now.
Yeah.
So the, seeing the 2,000 budgeted revenues sitting here averaging 58%, that's kind of low, isn't it?
It is, but we haven't made our second half property tax journal
Oh.
entry.
Okay.
Actually, I'm just running that right now, so that won't get made till December.
Okay.
And so that's the biggest chunk of that.
That'll boost our revenues
Right.
way up. And then do you distribute that, you proportion that out in here?
No, that just goes to the 805, the unanticipated,
Oh.
I mean, unallocated.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that, that variance of a negative 8,300,000 will go away.
It's deceiving. The revenues, in the revenue fund, since it's all tax dollars, it's a little deceiving as
Yeah.
far as that goes. If you look at the total, you can
Yeah.
look at the individual lines and they're pretty close.
Right, yeah, yeah. All right. Well, anybody else have any questions on this? Thank you for the report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Brian, you were down to just your report. You want to give that, please?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll continue with then my report. There's several things that have already been touched on. We had a meeting on the accounts receivable write-off meeting, and you approved that today. Commissioner Everett reported on the Felton Prairie parcel and discussion. That, I think, went extremely well. We met for about 2 hours on that, I think, and went through a lot of information, but learned a lot. It was really good. We had a meeting with the recorder this time. Well, I think last week we reported that Darren and I had met with Lori, and then we also addressed that in the PIC committee last week, or the 2 meetings ago on the PIC. So we're moving right along there. We'll be bringing some information for you before the end of the year to accomplish those appointments. I think we've made very good progress in regards to that. Had a diversion administrative advisory meeting, and I have communicated with the city of Moorhead, because I think on the Minnesota side, there's 6 entities that make up the diversion authority, and they have approved a budget for 2015, I believe, which starts, if I'm not mistaken, is it October 1st, I believe that starts, and Moorhead will approve theirs, or will be asking to approve the budget, and then we'll bring it the next day to the county, because they are the sponsor, so. we're
And how
waiting
much
for their
Minnesota
lead.
money's in the 2015 budget?
0. So there will be, but the entities need to approve the budget, so that will be brought before. And we had a central administration management meeting last week, went over some things on it. We had a county surveyor meeting, and we've had about 3 or 4 of those now. I think Commissioner Everett's been involved in those, and I think we've really made some good progress. We're going to bring to you a recommendation, very possibly, of not appointing a surveyor, but I think it's Dave, our county engineer, Mark Sloan, and Diane, the recorder, is going to be, they're going to be looking at how we proceed forward. We've got some real good input from some engineers and surveyors around here that we can do a better job of educating to get the corners in, and we'll, I think we'll see a real positive improvement in how we get the corners and stuff registered in 2015. I'm pretty excited about it. I think it's going to be a good move. Dave and Kirk went over the scales costs with me, and we spent some time discussing that, of electronics and the updates and where they're at on that, and they'll be bringing that to the board very soon, too. That's gone really well. Darren hosted another new hire orientation yesterday, and I attended that for a few minutes. The tobacco-free policy, we spent some time on that, and 2 of your commissioners, Commissioner Campbell and Commissioner Everett, were on that committee. I think we made real good progress and ironed out some things, and I don't know if anybody's extremely happy with the outcome, so that must mean it must be a pretty good compromise if that's the case, huh? I've been discussing with the chair of some revision for the renewal of the Jail Needs Committee. You had one in the past, and we have been communicating a little bit, and we'll be bringing that to the Jail Finance Committee and then to the board for your approval as to where we go with that. I think you had like a 13 or 14 member committee on that, and there's a lot of people that have changed positions and things, so that would need to be reappointed. We want to do that fairly soon, so just give you a heads up on that. That'll be coming in for your discussion and approval. We had a public health meeting, and I'm not sure what that was on. Oh, is that on personnel? Some personnel issues? Okay, that's one of them, yeah. Yep. We had a PIC meeting, and that's already been discussed. Rhonda and I have communicated a little more, and I touched base with the chair just a little bit. We are revisiting, I mentioned this once before in the committee reports, that we have revisited. Rhonda came back to me and said that with the board's approval, she would consider possibly on a contract basis of helping out Becker County. So we've put some figures together, we've sent it over to them for some input, and if they are so inclined to do that, we'd come back to the board and discuss it with you folks. It would be in addition to her regular job here, and it would be an extension, almost like working on a consultant basis over there, and we would charge them for it. So it wouldn't be taking any time here from Clay County, and so we'll bring that in. But just to let you know that we've talked more about that, and we have communicated with the chair in regards to that, and we'll see where that can go.
How much time are you thinking that you would?
She's thinking that she could contract with them for 10 hours a week, and that would give them a lot of guidance. She has a lot of expertise in that field, and so that's kind of what we're looking at. She just didn't feel she could spare time from Clay County to do that, so it would be extra time that she would do that, but she still wants to be under the umbrella of Clay County, and I think we would want her to be.
Sure.
So we'll come back and hopefully, we'll see what Becker has to say about it. So if that meets with your
But
guys'
we
approval.
would start off that as probably a fairly short defined period of time, and then you could expand it if we needed to, correct?
That is correct, sir. Yes. And with that, maybe just a short, I guess, thank you, and thank you for your support. Hopefully, we're done with the the Fargo Police Review Committee. I know I asked you a couple months ago about my involvement on that, and to a person, you showed your support. I think it was good of Clay County to help out on that. I think it was an extremely learning process. You couldn't attend a management seminar and get more out of it than what we did here. We did conduct all the interviews and different things on after hours, so to speak, but you know as well as I do that anytime you're involved in something that you receive phone calls and messages and things, and it does take energy. It consumes energy when you're involved in those extracurricular activities, and you guys supported that, and you supported Fargo on that, and I thank you for that support.
All right, is that it?
That's it.
Thank you, Brian. Vicki, anything for us? We have a late meeting next week, 5 p.m.?
It is, and depending on the number of items we get, I'll just back it up from 6 o'clock, because the truth and taxation does have to start at 6 or later.
Okay, so
Maybe 5:30 and maybe 5.
Okay, you'll get the word out on that with the agenda, all right? Very good, but it is a late afternoon.
Do we have highway tracking prior to it?
I believe we do.
Yes, we do.
Well, there's a jail planning at 3 o'clock,
Oh, that's right, jail planning at 3.
and your highway is in June,
Oh, yeah.
December, later in
Yeah,
December.
Yeah, December 16th or something. Yeah. So we have jail planning, finance.
Yes.
All right. All right, we will be adjourned.